Hello. So today I just wanted to have a bit of a chat around my Ghost Mantid communal and how it all panned out, as I feel like it's now kind of come to its natural conclusion. So I don't usually make videos like this. I appreciate you're probably not here to see boring humans. Invertebrates are much more fascinating. But I did want to summarise some information around my journey of keeping the Ghost Mantis communal. I hope it might be some beneficial advice for anybody looking to do the same kind of thing and just give some insights into how I found it. Got a little friend here, the darkest one of the bunch, who actually, as I was getting it out, I thought had died because she just fell to the floor. I thought, oh no, she's dead. But no, she was just faking it. It's a little defence mechanism where they will just throw themselves on the floor on their back and just keep very still, and obviously then they would blend in with the leaf litter due to their natural camouflage that they have. Anyway, just bear in mind that these are insights from my own personal experience and results may vary. This is just what I found with this specific group of mantids that I bought to see how they fared in a communal setup. I started off with 7 small nymphs, probably about L2 or L3, with the vision that they'd share a communal enclosure and grow together and hopefully be able to share that space without too many issues. From the offset, there was some territorial aggression between the nymphs, and interestingly enough, that was around the more lighted areas of the enclosure. My deduction from this is that they're all kind of vying for that highly contested spot in the light because it's probably more likely to have prey items near to it, what with flies being attracted to the light. So no wonder they were all kind of jostling to get the best position. But once I diffused the light, those issues kind of went away really, and they all established their own little territories within the enclosure. Being a communal, I was aware that cannibalism was always a risk, even though these species are kind of popularised as being one of the few mantids that can be kept together. So I kind of ensured that there was a regular supply of food in there just to help them resist the urge to have a little munch on each other. So we started off with 7, but fairly early on I noticed there was only 6 in there. I don't know whether one fell and died possibly and I just couldn't find it. It could have been cannibalism because I never did actually find them. But it feels a bit unlikely that they would have eaten each other at that stage because they were very young and they were all the same size. And as an interesting side note, when I got all these guys, they were all the same colour. And although I can't say for sure, presumably they're all from the same egg sac too. Often when you order, say, 7 mantids from the same place, they've probably got them all from a supplier who's likely came into a ooth which hatched and then has obviously moved those on. So chances are they are all brothers and sisters. But as they age, they really shew their polymorphism. Some got darker, such as this girl. Others were a more tan colour, and one was even a vivid green colour. And the interesting thing about that is, even though they were kept in the exact same conditions, with the same humidity, temperature, lighting, that variation still took place. And there is a belief that the different colours in ghost mantids is a result of the environment that they're in. So if they're in a drier, more arid, darker environment, then they'll turn out like this girl, being very dark, to help them blend in with the surroundings. Whereas if they're in a more of a lush green environment, they would turn green, again for the camouflage purposes. However, there was a clear divergence in colour as they matured, which does suggest there's more to that than we might think, because they were in the exact same environment. They were, being fed the same thing, kept at the same temperature. Nothing was different, but they still matured very differently. If anyone's got any further knowledge on that subject, let me know, because I find that really interesting. And from what I've read, there still isn't really a definitive answer on why that happens and what prompts those different colours in these cute little guys. It's definitely something I'd like to experiment more with in the future. If I had the space to have a bunch of ghost mantids, I'd definitely try some things out and see if we get any results from it. Because as far as I'm aware, there's just no explanation for it as an evolutionary behaviour. Who knows, it's fascinating nonetheless. If I ever done it, I'd probably have to do it with a bunch of nymphs, so I know it's from the same parentage, same genetics, and then see if there is any difference. So as they then proceeded to mature, I didn't really notice any major warning signs or anything until about L6 or L7, because it was at this point they really started to diversify in the speed of their growth. Maybe some were just more aggressive hunters, maybe it's genetics, maybe it's both or a coincidence, who knows. But this size difference is where I started to run into issues, because that's where I caught the green female of the bunch just happily having a little munch on one of the smaller males. I think maybe if you're very quick you might be able to save them if you caught them attacking each other, even though I think you'd still probably struggle. But yeah, this guy was long gone. She was already down to his torso, munching on him, poor little lad. So at this point I made the decision to move the 2 remaining males out of the enclosure into their own separate ones, as I had feared that maybe the females were more likely to exhibit that kind of behaviour where they have a little munch on the males. As, let's face it, the females are the important ones. They're the ones that are going to be laying the ooths, so they're the ones that need the food. So I just thought, you know what, let's get the males out of there and just save their skin. And whilst I was curious to see how things would play out, I didn't want to see them just eat each other just for experimental purposes. It didn't feel right. So yeah, I got the males out of there. But to be honest, long term I was going to move the males out anyway, because once they all reach maturity I didn't want them all to start breeding, because I'd have hundreds, thousands of nymphs, and I obviously don't have the capacity to deal with that. So long term they were going to be exiled regardless. And as far as those 2 remaining males went, they had their own enclosures which they were quite happy in, and they stayed there until their maturity and eventual demise, which then left us with 3 females. This girl, the dark one, there's a tanned one in here, and the green one. Again, another anomaly, the green one matured really quickly in comparison to the others. They had the same food availability, again, same environment, but she just went through her final molt like within no time and matured and got her wings. I mean, it was the same female that I caught munching on the male mantid when she was a lot younger. Maybe that had something to do with it. Obviously that's a very big meal, so it might have sped up her growth rate, possibly. I don't know if that would have any correlation. But again, with her being now quite a bit bigger than the other 2, I left her in the big enclosure and then moved out the other 2 remaining females into a separate enclosure just for their own safety. So we had 2 females in this smaller enclosure. They resided quite happily together for, it took a good few months at least for one of these to molt, being this girl here, the darker one. And then I moved her back in here with the green one. And again, no issues, so I think maybe it's a size thing, you know, they're the same size, so they just leave each other alone. And they kind of hung around in there for a while, and then the other day, the green female did actually pass away, which is kind of what prompted me to do this video. And the crazy thing is that the tan colour one in here still hasn't molted into her maturity and got her wings. I'm still waiting on it. And if anything, I've fed her more than the others because I was trying to get her to be the same size to try and keep them all in this enclosure at once. It's kind of wild that they started off, you know, the same instar, but actually this green one has went through her whole maturity and passed away before this one's even molted. But yeah, as soon as she does go through her molt, we'll certainly be able to reunite her with our old housemate, which she probably misses dearly, I'm sure. So what did I actually learn from my little experiment? To be honest, it probably prompted more questions than it did give me answers. Like, why did one of the females' growth accelerate so much quicker than the others? What really causes that massive variation in colour? Are the males a bit disposable to the females, so they will feast on them if given the opportunity like that? And you know, obviously this is just one isolated communal, so it's really hard to draw any conclusions without trying it more times. But overall, if I was pressed, I would say unless you're really dedicated to the hobby, you should probably be avoiding Ghost Mantis communals. The different growth rates, the unpredictability, and the potential to end up with hundreds if not thousands of young really kind of indicate that it's not particularly a species that should be touted as a communal species. And at the end of the day, unless you're lucky enough to have them all mature together at the same time, you're more than likely just going to end up separating them anyway. I mean, that male that got eaten, actually, I think he was only 1 instar behind, and it was actually just after he'd molted that he was eaten, because I saw he had molted that morning. So obviously he was very vulnerable while he was drying out, and that's probably when he got munched on, especially with no way to defend himself if he was, you know, a fresh molted mantis. I might try this again someday. I really enjoyed it, and I learned some new things about this species. It's stuff like that that keeps the hobby really interesting for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences if you've ever kept a communal like this. So let me know in the comments if you disagree with my conclusions, or if you've got any tips around something I possibly could have done better. I know there are much more experienced keepers than me out there, so I'd really appreciate the feedback. But anyway, thanks for listening to me to bang on about this, and congratulations if you managed to stick around to the end of the video. I just thought it'd be good to have a place where I could kind of summarise everything that I learned about the whole Ghost Mantis trial. If you like this kind of content, I usually post videos at least once a week, so consider subscribing. I also have an Instagram and Twitch in the description below. But until I see you again, take care and stay safe.